Hey everybody, it is Eric and it is Jay, and we are back from Barber Motorsports Park and the season opener. It is a new year in 2023. Time to fix all those nagging, important parts.
eBay oil cap. That's good for 10 horsepower.
Yep, time to put on your best and have an air of professionalism.
Maybe it's a year where we weren't going to befoul Barber's beautiful grounds with broken cars. All right, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Now, also because we move with the times and it's a new year, I don't know if you know this, writing these things and filming these videos, it's a lot of work. And we said, we don't want to do that anymore. Let's just let ChatGPT do it. We really did this. And here's what we got. I think it's going to be great. Announcer. Welcome to the 24 Hours of Lemons at Barber Motorsports Park. It's been an exciting weekend of racing. The racing has been intense with plenty of close calls and thrilling... All right, clearly that is not going to work at all. Let's go back to Eric's script.
Yeah, now Barber is, as we said, a very nice place. They have some rules to kind of keep it that way, like no glass bottles in the paddock, and you're not allowed to bring in dogs, but the rules were a little unclear on, what if the dog drives itself to the racetrack?
So let's jump right into the Hella Sweets. Hella sweet. At this race, we had our 2022 season champion, Neil Losi, spending the entire weekend dressed up as...
Jay, we can't say...
Right, okay, all right, I'm sorry. We started off 23 with our 2022 season champion, Neil Losi, dressed as a giant yellow non-trademark avian.
So why was Neil dressed up as the non-trademark large yellow avian? Well, he was driving with Lemon's most recent complete and utter madman, Stephen Hebert. Now, Stephen had gotten his hands on this bright yellow Mercedes SLK 230 compressor, which was perfect for a Pagani replica, along with a Lotto winners / new money theme that had stacks of $100 bills, big spender suits, and of course, somebody crashing it immediately in the race. They got it fixed, but it was all pretty hell sweet.
Same group had a but terrible. They brought their V12 Mercedes S600 Cleverly Hillbillies car, which they brought a bunch of times, which is spectacular. This car was $133,000, 25 years ago when it was new. And now, it's a negative $500 car. And here's why.
We had a number of great themes at this one. Team A Feudal and Stupid Gesture were dressed as T-Rexes driving a Miata. That's awesome.
Hella sweet Ashy Larry Racing showed up with their Honda Civic and an OnlyFans theme, that referring to the devices which spin and move air, just for the record. They did inexplicably have some sweet pimpin' outfits, however, and teammate Dave Vaughn spent most of the weekend, as he does, fixing somebody else's Honda, because he's a hella sweet guy. Yeah,
Silent But Deadly, a Halloween meets gasoline winner from last year, promised us a new theme this year, so they painted their Thunderbird as an exact replica of Thin Blue Swine's Thunderbird, which is a great idea in theory until the corner workers mistake you for the other car and you get black flagged inadvertently.
Can I just say, is it super meta that we now have a Lemons car do an exact replica of a Lemons car that is an exact replica? Love that. And kind of sticking with the theme, Scuderia Fartari brought back after several years their 200SX / Ferrari Testarossa. If you want to have a horrible, junky Econobox and Lemons and you Testarossa-ize it, you're always going to be our heroes.
Now that Ferrari is a Nissan 200SX, and speaking of weird Nissans, Glue Sticks came down from Philadelphia with their Nissan NX2000. What the hell even is that? And a Toyota Supra. This was a week ahead of the Super Bowl, so they didn't It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, The Gang Gets Invincible theme, where they tried out for the Eagles.
Run out in a can. Shows people how to play football.
Singing Fly Eagles Fly, dressed as the Green Man. The Eagles didn't win, Glue Sticks didn't win, but they did get to swap in a Supra transmission over the weekend.
One of Eric's highlights for the weekends was these Dodger guys. So they showed up with an Eclipse convertible. Now last year at Barber, which was their first race, they showed up with this, base twin cam neon motor in this car. We promptly blew its bottom end, as they do. And they emailed Eric later and said, hey, what should we do? We need a residual value, which all of you should be doing. And very few of you are, but good on them. And Eric said, I don't know, go get a PT Cruiser motor, blah, blah, blah. So they did. Actually, they got an entire PT Cruiser running and driving. Pretty good car. $700. Sold stuff off to get to zero. Free engine. Bolted into the car. Documented everything. It was awesome.
Now, we put them in Class C, which with an Eclipse, you might be thinking, man, they must have really messed up. But they had mated the PT Cruiser bottom end with the neon top end, which isn't supposed to work, and in fact doesn't. There's a 1000 RPM band where nothing happens in this engine, and it all seemed pretty tenuous, but then they went out and they were crushing Class C, and I was like, man, I think I screwed up. But as happens with Mitsubishis, it blew apart in spectacular fashion. You know what they did after the race? They emailed me immediately for a residual value.
Speaking of things that worked better than we expected, if not well, the Mustang, the Lexus V8 powered Mustang, they actually got into triple-digit laps, which is not to say that they finished.
We had a couple of hella sweet guests as well. Ben Lynn from Gears and Gasoline, the YouTube channel, he came out and raced Mark LeBranche's very quick Toyota MR2, which blew up.
Yeah, we had some other YouTubers, this time from Junkyard Digs. They resurrected an old Ford Pinto. They invited Nolan from Donut Media to come out and drive, and they did okay and racked up, just a few penalties.
Yeah, on the subject of penalties, I felt like injecting a little bit of literary class and quality to the race, so I had an E.E. Cummings poetry reading from a team that had been in the penalty box frequently.
The way to hump a cow is not to push and then to pull, but practice the art of SWAT to breach the golden rule.
And we also had some of the classics.
So bad driving, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
A lot of those classics were imposed by trained professional litigator Bob Griffin. From Escape Velocity in Texas, he came on as a first-time judge, and he kind of crushed it. For example, we were bribed with edible underwear at one point. One penalty was the team had to taste it. Spoiler alert, it's disgusting. Bob also, we don't exactly understand what he was thinking, made teams carry their batteries to the Buckys statue at the nearby gas station because Texas brownouts. Well, we don't know, but you know what? If the jury votes his way, he's good.
Now, on the subject of Buckys, if you don't know, it is the Texas gas station that is basically the size of an airport, and you can find pretty much anything there. We had several teams come through BS inspections with absolutely no themes, and we were pretty bored and tired of that, so we told them, you're going to get 10 laps if you don't have a theme, so come back with a theme. And every single one of them went to Buckys and came back with an instant theme. Low effort, high reward.
The Scottish tartan themed plaid encrusted Toad era Valiant of Off-Kilter Racing, they had a spectacular bribe. They made Eric a lard and Kim, I don't know, what do they call it, a lardess? What's a royal Scottish lady? Anyway, I think you can buy these. It's like for a square inch of land in Scotland. So they're royalty now. Nicely done.
I'm afraid I blew myself. Now, in every single one of these videos, we talk about how there were so many things that blew up and went wrong, but really at this race, this number of them was completely staggering. We'll start with Ragged Racing, who brought two cars to this race, very related ones, a Honda CRX and a Borg Ward Isabella. Now, you may be shocked to find that the Borg Ward blew up the differential and the CRX nuked a head gasket, but they had a backup, a Corvette, which ran okay while they were fixing the Borg Ward. They fixed that, they sent it back out without the fuel cell cap on it, which promptly fell off and ended their day because nobody could go and retrieve it. That's a butt-terrible way to end your race.
Burt Rubber Soul's 626 finally expired to its terminal 5-year-old rod knock.
not dominating.
10mm Racing, now this one takes a bit of explaining, so buckle in. It was a rough weekend for them and for the people helping them out. Now, 10mm Racing is a group of firefighters with a Volkswagen Cabrio. They emailed us pretty close to the event, and it became pretty evident that they weren't gonna make it and pass tech. Now, as it so happened, all-around Lemon's good guy Chris Sweeney was racing that weekend in a different car, and he intended to leave his hot-rodded Dodge Dakota at home. Now, instead, he threw the transmission back in it and decided he was going to lend it to the 10mm guys. That's kind of where things began to fall apart. The transmission was in and out and in and out and in and out all on Friday 3 times. They blew up a clutch. They sheared the flywheel bolts. Something finally went wrong that had them say, well, that's not getting fixed. He tried really hard to get these new guys on track, but it just really wasn't in the cards for them. Now, all this is to say, the car he was supposed to be driving was a V6 Mustang that must have had the original transmission fluid in it with about 240,000 miles on the clock. You will not be surprised to learn that the transmission did not want to work this way. They tried to swap out the fluid, put a cooler on it, totally dead. Bad weekend for Chris and all the people associated with it.
Sadly but terrible was the Some BMW. By the way, it's a great name. I know you can't hear it. Trust me, great name. So these guys, it's a LS Swap E39. Normally we would not be very interested in this at all, but Andy Bailey did this all by himself in his garage, hand tools basically, the wiring and all the adapters and that sort of stuff, and surprise, kind of didn't work. Well, the solution, it was determined in the paddock, was, you know what, clutches, overrated. Let's just weld a bunch of stuff together and then you won't have any problems. And you know what, they were right, it worked great for 2 laps, and that was the end.
Well, that's probably enough about all the fixes that didn't work. Let's start talking about the trophies and the fixes that did, more or less. We'll start with a heroic fix, which went to Little Enos Racing and their Ford Tempo. Now, they towed this thing from Ohio, and the team captain, Jacob, was driving it at the very start, got about 5 laps in, and the steering rack started wobbling uncontrollably. He said, oh, well, that's not good. Turns out he had blown up the power steering rack entirely, and the nearest one happened to be in Memphis, Tennessee, which is nowhere near Birmingham, Alabama. He dispatched some of his teammates, who are family, which is worth pointing out, to go get it. They brought it back, reinstalled it, to discover that the fittings were all leaking. They knew they would never find a power steering fitting for a Ford Tempo in Alabama, so they slapped some JB Weld on it. Then the guys from the 444 Corolla showed up and conveniently had a bottle of power steering stop leak, which who the hell knew that existed? They dumped it in, they ran the Tempo, they decided they were going to let it go and hope to get a lap out of it. Ran for 4 hours. Just for a bonus, team captain Jacob also sliced his head open on a hanging tie rod while he was reinstalling the steering rack. So, tough weekend, but they rolled with it pretty well.
I Got Screwed went to multi-time champion Anton Lovett and his 544 Volvo. We've talked about this car a lot. It is a 544 with all kinds of Chevy Uplander GD parts, which does not count as GD parts. They wanted to race Barber. They shipped the car to Texas. Onset hauled the car the rest of the way. They got there and the car did not work. Surprise! More accurately, it worked great on test day. You should never test because that uses up the car's rare running time. And at the end of the day, the clutch completely exploded. What is it with clutches and gearboxes at this race? They had to pull the motor multiple times, including Dr. Mary Harris doing it in a Bucky Beaver suit. Don't ask us why. That got back together, then the car started throwing codes. It was just a nightmare all weekend long, but hey, at least it didn't cost them a fortune in shipping. Oh wait, yes it did.
The event-specific trophy is the So Easy, Even Florida Man Can Do It trophy, which we gave out to BAR Racing and their Toyota Corolla. Now, we talked about them with a previous trophy winner. We will talk about them with a subsequent trophy winner. But the key things to note are they had a Civic SI that they raced a couple times, and it was just kind of, didn't want to be in Class A, so they instead showed up with this, a Toyota Corolla with a 3-speed automatic. We love it when teams go backwards in terms of performance, and as is almost categorically the case when this happens, they had way more fun beating the hell out of a really slow car. And it turns out it's way true that driving a slow car fast is the funnest thing you can do in Lemons. They'd used it as a rallycross beater for years, threw a cage in it, voila, Lemons car. So easy, even Florida Man can do it.
Judge's choice went to Retro Racing. We've talked about this car any number of times, and historically they always have some incredibly cheaty air-cooled motor, and it incredibly blows up, often oiling down the entire track, and rinse, repeat, do it again. Well, this time they had just blown up their incredibly cheaty air-cooled motor at the last race, didn't have time to rebuild it, so they had to put in their slow, boring, much more stock air-cooled motor, and guess what happened next? The car just kept running, and they wound up finishing a whole bunch of laps, and they did really well. And is that going to be a lesson for them going forward?
Yes, well!
Organizer's choice went to Turtle Racing Team and their Toyota Tercel. Now, we've said this often, and it always bears repeating. Lemons should be completely full of Toyota Tercels and Corollas. Turtle is a family team with a father, son, and the son's girlfriend. They are racing the most bone stock, low option, miser trimmed, slow ass Tercel we've ever seen. 4-speed manual transmission, probably the last one sold in America. Yep. Squishy blown suspension with 340,000 miles on it. Got that too. 90 horsepower? Maybe. Unfortunately, a BMW had a misunderstanding with them, and they had to spend most of Saturday rebuilding their Tercel. They got some help from Florida Man, the BAR Corolla guys who used their pickup to straighten the body. Then they found a Subaru Crosstrek radiator, which is apparently what fits in there, rebuilt it, slapped the bumper back on it, and sent it. It was hell sweet.
The eBay Motors Halloween Meets Gasoline Trophy went to Hi Hungry, I'm Dad, and their 929. You start with a 929 and you're already 3/4 of the way there, right? So then they decided to add two more things. One, a lot of Disney Princess, Little Mermaid stuff that they were in for, 100 hours straight. And then, what is it with batteries at this race? Their other shtick was, throw the batteries in the ocean, the electric eels like it powers the currents. I don't know, but between the Bucky battery sacrifice and these guys looking for ponds, we had to restrain them, from throwing their batteries into the decorative ponds. I don't know what the hell's going on here.
That's pretty tough to follow, but the index of affluency went to the smokin' hot flashes in their Mercedes R107. Now, this is the third of the Mercedes that are part of Stephen Hebert's weird paddock setup with a, V12 and a compressor, but this one is captained by his wife Jane and driven by a group of women. Now, unlike Stephen's other two Mercedes, this one actually runs for an entire race without any mechanical flaws, and it's beaten the hell out of dozens of steely-eyed real racers. Now, this is especially rich to us because the car has a giant pink for a shifter, saggy boobs mounted where the headlights go, and pink glitter paint that makes it not look like the crusty piece of depreciation Mercedes that it actually is. This time around, they beat 40 teams, which included 2 BMW E46s, 2 Mercedes compressors, 2 Honda CRXs, 2 LS swapped BMWs, a VR6 GTI, a Porsche 928, and every single BMW E30 that had not been left completely stock. That's how you do index of affluency.
Whew, quite a list. Okay, here's Lemons in a nutshell.
Every second you don't subscribe or watch one of these videos, another Vega is sent to the crusher. Won't you help us save Classic?